everybody. Welcome back to our Tuesday chat. And tonight we are talking about a topic that is running rampant through our private Facebook groups. We want to talk about anxiety. So many people are worried about so many things right now. It's just a really overwhelming emotion. It's something we're all feeling right now. So we're here to normalize it and give you some suggestions to help you get through these really tough times. Marley, hi.
Hi, nice
How
to
are
see
you?
Um, yeah, I'm definitely dealing with some anxiety on a regular basis.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Marley, let's talk about some strategies for people because we like to be really practical. We like to give you the tips and tricks that you can use in your everyday life to just help you feel better. So, Marley, I know you like to take a big picture kind of approach and help people understand themselves in that way. So why don't you share with us your thoughts on anxiety?
Yeah. Sounds good. So first of all, anxiety, like I think the term gets tossed around a lot. But at the end of the day, anxiety is the emotion that is linked to our feelings towards uncertainty. Or that fear of the unknown, not being able to be in control. And it's also directly linked to our own interpretation of our ability to handle the unknown or the uncertain. So if we're really emotionally resilient and we feel really strong in our own resources, then we're going to have less anxiety. So that is number one right off the bat, is just building up your internal stores of resources, whether that be like, and I really want you to talk about this, about all of those basics that we need to make sure we maintain. But for me, as a therapist, one of my main focuses is on family systems and looking at the individual within not only their family, but within their cultural context, their systems. So how does your system, whether it's your family or your culture, how does your family or your whatever system you fit within, how has that traditionally handled any uncertainty, unknown, fear, loss? Any of those big things are going to cause us that angst, that anxiety. So always, like, that's a big part of the L-Mind program, is looking at yourself within the context of your family and looking at how we cope traditionally, right? There's a lot of research now going into epigenetics where we get passed down within our own DNA the biology that is going to tell us how we're supposed to handle certain situations that are uncertain. So if we don't recognize them, we're just going to get lost in them. So I just want to remind people that you don't have to cope and deal with things the way that your family has always done it. You can break the chain. And I think a lot of people just see themselves within the system. This is how it's always been done. This is how their parents have role modeled dealing with anxiety, whether it's, drinking alcohol, whether it's getting angry, whether it's running away from things and hiding, whether it's living in denial. There's so many different ways that we manage anxiety. But you can break the chain. And that's a really important reminder for people to look at themselves within the bigger system, understanding how you fall into it and how the patterns are showing up, and then B, knowing that you can do something different. So, but as I did talk about, there are some important steps that we can take to make sure that our internal stores, our own resources are nice and topped up. And I know, Dr. Lydia, you're huge on basics, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about that. And I know you check in with our members every week in our private group around their basics and hitting those things. So what would you recommend, meeting those basic things? What would you recommend?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to affirm everything that you're saying. I think that oftentimes we love our parents so much that it's hard to take a critical eye and say, okay, like maybe they had some coping mechanisms that weren't necessarily the best. And it's not their fault. We're not faulting them. They grew up with what they grew up with, right? It was passed down. But that's one thing I love about our L60 group is we have a lot of women that are like, I'm breaking the cycle, like maybe we had alcohol use, or maybe we had abusive relationships, or we were disconnected, and you know what, I'm doing something differently for my kids. And so thank you, Marley, for bringing that up. But yes, I am a back to basics babe every week. And sometimes I feel like a broken record, but I don't care because it's really important.
Yeah,
So
it is.
we need to take care of our physical bodies as well as our mental bodies. And sometimes it's really hard to reprogram your thoughts. Like it's not something that you can just snap your fingers and do, right?
Mhm.
But we can take care of our physical body. And when our body is well, it has a feedback loop to our mind to tell our mind to be less anxious. We have to remember that mind, body, body, mind, there's a really strong link there. So, what basics mean are you drinking water? Are you sleeping? Are you eating a few meals a day, like 3 meals a day? Are you eating when you're hungry? Like it doesn't have to be, like Marley said, it doesn't have to be like rocket science or overly difficult, but just make sure that you have those basics in place.
Yeah. If you were to recommend like one of those things, I know they're so important, but if people are just completely off track and like if there's one thing that you could recommend that people start to focus on in terms of helping with their anxiety, what would it be? That's a big question because I know there's a
Yeah, I
lot.
want to say sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of women aren't sleeping well and haven't been sleeping well for a long time. And then with 2020 just being
Yeah.
what it was, what it is,
Yeah.
I think that's even exacerbated. And women need both a mental break. And often, like, if we're really honest with women, the only time you get a mental break is when you're asleep. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes even your dreams are a little bit tortured. Like, I think a
Yes.
lot of people are having, have you noticed this, Marley? Are you having wild dreams? Have you noticed your dreams have changed at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I know it's largely influenced by everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I don't know. How about like it is kind of one of those things like just like living with the constant anxiety and uncertainty. It gets into your subconscious and it shows up in our dreams. Absolutely. Are you feeling the same thing? Are you finding it from clients or
Yeah, I go through fits and spurts, but it definitely is related to how settled I'm feeling. It's
yeah.
dreams are such an interesting. That's why Carl Jung spent so much time analyzing dream states, right? Because it's one of the few windows you have into your subconscious. So
Totally.
if you are having nightmares, if you're having dreams, and sometimes my like if we're real, like dreams can be really terrifying. Like you can
Yeah.
feel like really intense emotion in your dream states because a little part in your brain, the amygdala, which is like your emotion center, right, is active while you're dreaming. So you are processing emotional states while you are dreaming. So if your dreams are, woo, if they're scary, it means that there's some stuff that you have to process, which is,
Absolutely.
easier said than done, but it's just, yeah, it's a thing.
It is, and I think a lot of us do kind of like we do most things, we downplay a lot of these little signals and signs. So if we don't really start to pay attention to them, but you're absolutely right. The emotions that we feel during dreams are very real and they can stick with us for a very, very long time. And some of that stuff does need to be processed through and moved through. Absolutely, I would agree. Um,
Yeah. What do
yeah.
you think about like, okay, so if people have like an anxious thought, what would you suggest in terms of how they can process that?
So the perfect word. So it's really important too. And you talked about this before, but talking about thoughts, but also the emotions and the physical sensations that happen with anxiety. There's so many different components to anxiety. And I know that you spoke a lot about the physical experience too of how anxiety can manifest. But thoughts, if we're talking specifically about thoughts, there's some awesome tools with when it comes to cognitive behavioral therapy. What we can do some thought swapping, it's called. You can consider the thought that you have, and is there a different thought that you can replace it with? We have so much control, and I think a lot of us feel like our minds, our thoughts are our reality and that we have no power to control them. It's such a simple concept, and if you Google like how to manage anxiety, like these kinds of tactics is simply just taking control over your own mind and being like, hold on a second, I don't have to think that thought. I actually have the power here to choose a different thought. But it can be really important to slow down the body first, right? Because if we're having the physical symptoms of anxiety, like you just talked about, right? That mind-body connection is crazy strong. And if we can't bring ourselves down, take a deep breath and start to get into that rational mind, it's really hard to use some of those more rational, intellectual skills like swapping out your thoughts. If you are running on absolute high fight or flight, and you are just so breathing is number one to help bringing your body down so that you can actually apply some of these techniques. Breathing is like, it's so simple, but we forget about it so much, to use it, to take a deep breath, and then use some of our own cognitive skills to swap out thoughts, to recognize when we're in a thinking trap, when like you even posted in our EHM group, right? It's like, are you catastrophizing? Like, are you basically thinking the absolute worst in the situation? And how is this helpful to you right now? Is it helpful? Like, is there actually information here that can help you problem solve or move forward? Or is this just making things worse? And there's no reason for you to make this worse. So there's a lot of conversations that can go on in our own heads. Actually, one thing that I really like to do is I actually will see my anxiety as a separate part of me. So it's not actually me. You can actually name your anxiety. It's ego mind oftentimes is a really good one, but you can give it a name so that you don't feel so attached to it. So it's something else that you have control over. That's kind of like invading your brain a little bit, but right. Okay. This isn't me, ego mind, whatever you want to name it. It's okay. Thank you. But like, chill out.
So good, Marley, because you're speaking to the concept of consciousness, being able to step outside of your thoughts and be the observer of your thoughts. And as soon as you are shifting into that mindset, you've just up leveled like your life so severely. It's honestly the root of all of our suffering, is when we're following and chasing different thoughts down the rabbit hole, because the mind just gets up to no good. We like that part of the post, like with the catastrophizing, was understanding how the brain works. It's like your mind is always looking to protect you. And in order to do that, it's like the overbearing mother that's constantly pointing out like, this can go wrong and that can go wrong and this could happen to you, to try to keep you safe. And it's like an active, like, I feel like being anti-anxiety is like an active concept to work towards finding peace. It's not, I don't think it's that passive in this day and age. Do you think it's a passive thing?
What, like trying to get rid of your anxiety, or?
Yeah, like I feel like we actually, like, I feel like where we would fall on the scale is more towards anxious in this North American society. It's like we actually have to put in some work to find peace, even though it should be our default state. I feel like it just isn't. It just isn't.
No. Well, we're not built for this. We're not meant, like, the world has evolved far too rapidly for our brains. Like, we're not meant to deal with this much stress and expectation and stimulus. Like, we're not meant to. That our brains aren't equipped that way. And we were built exactly like you said, from an evolutionary standpoint. We are built to look for danger. We are built to find ways to protect us. And our brain has done this for millennia, and we need to recognize that. And we do really, it needs to be a constant practice. But I think for a very long time, up until maybe even just recently, we've really completely disregarded the importance of our mental and emotional health, and have not considered the importance of taking care of our anxious mind.
Yes, huge stigma.
Yeah.
Okay, we're at 9:13. Okay, so 9:15, we go live in Emotional Health Matters. If you're not a member of our free group, you really should be. Join us. Okay, Marley, I'm going to end our live here, and we're going to continue this conversation in the EHM.
Okay, see you there.